stop while you are ahead because you're going to look like a fool. It's ridiculous. Stop it. Okay? This doesn't even make sense to me that she would even think that she
went scorched earth. The palace said, absolutely not. We're going to completely cut you off now. Thanks to Oprah, thanks to Spare, thanks to the Harry and Meghan Netflix series, because they were...
Meghan's title could be on very shaky ground. Yet those close to the Duchess insist she won't be intimidated. Meghan's never been short of ambition or drive and is absolutely relentless, said the...
The monarchy stayed dead silent. The public whispered and waited nervously. Then William shut down every last maybe in one sharp, devastating move. Prince William crossed a line no future king had ever crossed before. And once he did, there was absolutely no undoing it. This was not a leak, not palace spin, and definitely not some soft wording floated out to test reactions. William put his own name on a statement so direct and so final that even people deep inside royal circles had to reread it twice just to be sure they weren't misunderstanding. Just 19 words. That was it. And buried inside them was a crystal-clear message. There would be no pathway for return. What made this so absolutely shocking is that William has spent most of his adult life doing the exact opposite. He stayed quiet, took the hits, let rumors spread, and allowed speculation to run completely wild because that's what heirs are trained to do. They wait, they calculate, they protect the institution by saying as little as possible. Silence was his armor, patience was his strategy. But years of brutal restraint finally slammed into a reality that could no longer be ignored. So why now? Why break a lifetime of royal discretion with one brutal and unmistakable declaration? The reason is simple. Silence stopped working. Every carefully polished royal statement about Meghan had left tiny openings, little hints of maybe later or something could still change. Each phrase gave space for spin, confusion, and manipulation.
Relations between the Sussexes and the Prince of Wales remain fraught. William's running out of patience, said the source. Good on him. He believes the Sussexes have cashed in on their royal connection.
William erased all of that in one stroke. This wasn't emotional. It wasn't reckless. It was surgical precision. By putting his name directly on the statement, he made something devastatingly clear. This didn't come from advisors, protocol, or palace tradition. This came from him. Insiders understood immediately that negotiation was completely over. This wasn't a warning. It wasn't a test run. It was closure. A former palace press secretary summed it up perfectly when they said, "When William speaks like this, the matter is beyond debate." And that's when everything shifted dramatically. The tone moved from speculation to cold realization, and suddenly this wasn't just about Meghan anymore. The statement exposed something way deeper. It showed the kind of King William plans to be, a man ready to defend his family, protect the institution, and shape the future of the monarchy without compromise. For Catherine, but the breaking point didn't come from one scandal. It came from a pattern that never stopped.
swelled up with ego, she doesn't even know when to control it. Like, at this point, you need to just shut your mouth, okay? That's ridiculous. That's what I think.
Yeah, and the thing is, Dinah, Paula Frolic of News Nation is making it clear that William is very serious about this.
By September 2024, she was fully focused on her work. Early childhood programs, mental health campaigns, long-term policy initiatives designed to make real change. But almost every effort was followed by something dark. Negative articles appeared, not random ones either. They dropped with perfect timing. Same phrases, same vague palace insiders, same quiet jabs that chipped away at her credibility. At first, Catherine brushed it off. She was used to media pressure, but she's methodical. She pays attention. She started keeping records. By November, she had documented 10 separate cases where negative coverage dropped less than 48 hours after her public initiatives. 10. That was no coincidence. Calmly and carefully, she took everything to William. "This is intentional," she said quietly. "Interference." For Catherine, who rarely complains and almost never pushes back, this was absolutely huge. Her words hit William like a lightning strike. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't tabloid chaos. This was strategy. A coordinated effort to weaken her standing and, by extension, to weaken the monarchy itself. And that realization changed everything. William understood right away that the attacks were not random. They were calculated, targeted, and aimed straight at the woman who would one day be queen. That realization hardened him fast. What once looked like a perception problem had turned into a power problem, and the monarchy could not afford to keep looking the other way. William knew action was no longer optional. By mid-November, William received a classified security briefing that changed everything. This was not routine, not ceremonial, and definitely not symbolic. It was blunt and tightly focused. Royal security teams had been tracking online harassment campaigns, and what they uncovered was deeply troubling. This was not spontaneous criticism or organic outrage. It was coordinated, amplified, and strategic. Groups of accounts moved together, posting identical talking points and pushing the same narratives at the exact same time. Catherine was the clear target.
Moving on from royal life, those titles remain their foundation. She and Harry will fight hard to hold on to them. P. Diner, your reaction?
The delusion.
The question burning in William's mind was answered carefully but unmistakably. A significant part of the network traced back to pro-Sussex supporters. What once felt like a private family issue had exploded into a digital campaign meant to destabilize the royal family itself. Catherine, always composed, never demanded action. She carried herself with discipline and focus, even as hostility followed her every move. But watching his wife quietly absorb calculated attacks while balancing public duty and raising their children forced William to face a hard truth. Ambiguity was enabling harm. Every half-step, every ignored signal had given opponents room to operate. From that moment, William saw the stakes clearly. This was no longer just personal, it was institutional. Inaction was a luxury the monarchy could no longer afford. Doors left slightly open had become entry points for chaos. For the first time in decades, William's silence was ready to give way to decisive action. And this was only the start. While William reached clarity, Charles was struggling under a weight few could imagine. October 2024 had been relentless. Staff were overwhelmed, communications teams stretched thin, endless hours spent managing fallout tied to Sussex-related controversy. Diplomacy, policy work, and international priorities were pushed aside just to control speculation and limit damage. Charles confided to a trusted aide, saying, "I feel trapped between my love for Harry and my responsibility to the institution." He wanted reconciliation, healing, and stability, but the hope that had guided him for years had slowly turned into paralysis.
Sources are telling you the Duke and Duchess of Sussex may lose their title. Why? How did this happen?
Well, this happened because Andrew lost the title and Prince William stood up and took notice at how easy it was. So before...
Every unanswered question fed another media cycle. Every delay triggered another crisis, and Charles, already navigating serious health concerns, felt the strain both personally and institutionally. William watched all of this closely. He listened as his father spoke about forgiveness and patience. But he also saw the brutal cost of waiting too long. Hope alone could not hold the monarchy together. It needed boundaries, clear lines, and firm defense. Slowly, William reached a realization his father had not yet accepted. To protect the institution, some relationships had to be managed with firmness, not sentiment. Compassion could not replace accountability, and if the crown was going to survive the storm ahead, action had to come before speculation turned into instability. This understanding shaped William's next moves, not impulsive, not driven by anger, but guided by clarity and resolve. He believed a future monarch had to show strength, decisiveness, and the courage to act when silence stopped working. Then Anne stepped in. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't soften her message. She delivered clarity with surgical precision. "You cannot protect everyone," she told William, something he would never forget. "At some point, you choose the institution or the individual creating instability." Her words were calm, but they landed with absolute force. Anne has spent her entire life in service. She understands what others avoid admitting. Institutions survive by enforcing boundaries, not by protecting feelings. Sentiment, loyalty, and personal preference cannot outweigh structural necessity.
Shut your mouth, okay? You don't know what you're talking about. You are not going to get to keep that title. It is going to be stripped, and just get used to.
William had been searching for a middle path, a way to shield family members while preserving the crown, and Anne shattered that illusion completely. There was no middle ground when the stakes involved the monarchy itself. By now, the pressure around William was impossible to ignore. Catherine was under sustained attack, Charles was exhausted, and palace staff were quietly questioning whether the current structure could even hold. International partners were watching closely, measuring stability with every passing week. Every delay increased the risk. Anne stepped in again, steady and precise. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't soften her message, she delivered clarity with surgical focus. "You cannot protect everyone." The words cut through the noise. She repeated it plainly. "At some point, you choose the institution or the individual creating instability." Anne had spent decades living by that rule. She knew what others refused to face. Institutions survive because they draw firm lines. Loyalty cannot override responsibility. Personal feelings cannot outweigh survival. William had been clinging to the idea of balance, hoping there was a way to protect everyone. But that belief collapsed under the weight of reality. There was no safe middle when the monarchy itself was on the line. The pressure surrounding William intensified. Catherine continued to face coordinated attacks. Charles was visibly worn down. Staff questioned whether the system could endure prolonged uncertainty.
Very angry at all times, and William's just kind of like, hey, who the heck are you? And yes, they do blame Meghan. Now, I don't like to blame one person for another person's actions. Everyone has their own responsibilities. However,
Overseas partners watched quietly, calculating risk and reliability. Every day of delay magnified the danger. What began as family tension had transformed into a structural vulnerability. Anne's words echoed in William's mind. Leadership demanded decisiveness. Protection could not be unlimited. Indecision had consequences. Chaos had been allowed to grow, and the Crown's credibility and function were paying the price. By the end of the briefing, William accepted a hard truth. Sacrifice was unavoidable. That the institution had to come first, and in Anne's calm, unflinching clarity, he found the resolve he had been missing. This was no longer about personal disagreements or private wounds. It was about the survival and integrity of the monarchy itself. December 1st, Windsor Castle, a private study wrapped in complete silence. William arrived early carrying a single folder. Inside it was the statement that would close a chapter of decades-long speculation. Time felt heavier than usual. He placed the folder on the desk and waited. Charles entered next, visibly worn from weeks of relentless pressure. Anne followed, her gaze sharp and exact. Then Catherine arrived, steady and composed, prepared to witness a moment that would redefine everything. There was no ceremony, no performance, no excess formality, just a room filled with weight, purpose, and decisions that could no longer be delayed. William opened the meeting without ceremony. This decision will be permanent. Silence followed immediately. The statement was read aloud slowly and deliberately, line by line. Every word was chosen with care. Every sentence carried the weight of finality, leaving no space for confusion or reinterpretation. Catherine was the first to respond. It's clear. It doesn't attack. It states reality. Her calm assessment cut through the tension.
embarrassment, as we again saw with Andrew, with people off doing their things, and especially with Meghan and Harry, still attempt.
She made it clear the statement wasn't emotional or retaliatory. It was factual, a declaration of institutional clarity, nothing more and nothing less. Charles hesitated. The gravity of the moment was written across his face. After a long pause, he nodded and said, "You have my support." Not because this was what he wanted, but because he trusted his son to lead wisely. That trust mattered. At 7:48 a.m. the next morning, the statement went live across the world. Headlines shifted instantly. History moved in real time. A decisive chapter closed, and the monarchy stepped forward with renewed clarity and control. Nothing would ever be the same again. 4:48 a.m. California time. Harry's phone vibrated quietly in the dark of his bedroom. He reached for it, expecting routine updates. What he found instead changed everything. He read the statement alone in silence. This wasn't palace machinery, it wasn't anonymous authority or a carefully staged PR move. This was his brother, Prince William, speaking directly and closing a door with no room for interpretation. Sources later said something inside Harry broke at that moment. Meghan's reaction was quieter, controlled, measured, but even her composure couldn't hide the weight of what had just happened. The statement erased narrative flexibility completely. No loopholes, no ambiguity, no room to maneuver.
And I think this was important too. It certainly backed up my reporting over the past few months. Why William feels so strongly about this. Watch.
For years, ambiguity had been Meghan's shield, a buffer that allowed reinterpretation, reframing, and repositioning. That buffer was gone. William's words closed the door publicly and permanently. There would be no rewriting history, no softening the edges of accountability. The moment itself was quiet, no visible drama, no spectacle, but the impact was massive. This wasn't speculation anymore. It wasn't internal discussion or delayed negotiation. The future had been set. The Crown had acted decisively. For Harry and Meghan, the world they once believed could bend was now clearly defined. Their path moved separately from the monarchy's forward momentum, with no overlap and no return. This wasn't symbolic. It was operational. The consequences were immediate and unmistakable. No royal coordination, no institutional backing, no presence at future royal milestones. Every public appearance, every event, every expectation of inclusion was recalibrated instantly.
It is so appropriate right now because it's Tom Bauer taking us back to when the King and Meghan spent some time together.
Meghan's future would now unfold entirely on her own terms, but without royal leverage, influence, or protection. The uncertainty that once allowed flexibility was gone. The maybe, the someday, all erased. History now carried William's decision as fact. The institutional record was sealed and could not be contested. What remained was freedom, but freedom with weight. Every choice, every opportunity, every consequence now rested solely on Meghan and her immediate circle. Now, the shift wasn't punishment, it was definition. The Crown drew its lines, clarified its boundaries, and set a precedent for the future. Royal observers understood immediately that this was an extraordinary moment in modern monarchy history. This was a permanent and public severing of influence, carried out with clarity and historical precision. For Meghan, this was not symbolic in any way. It was operational. The consequences were immediate and unmistakable. No royal coordination, no institutional backing, no presence at future royal milestones ever. Every appearance, every event, every expectation of inclusion was recalibrated in real time. Meghan's future would now unfold entirely on her own terms, but without royal leverage, influence, or institutional protection.
In Harry's book, Harry talks about how they bonded, Meghan Markle and the king, and just how close they truly were. But
Ambiguity disappeared. On the maybe and the someday that once allowed flexibility inside the royal narrative were erased completely. History now carried William's decision as fact, sealed into the institutional record and impossible to contest. Freedom, yes, but freedom came with the full weight of independence. Every decision, every opportunity, every consequence now rested solely on Meghan and her immediate circle. The shift was not punishment, it was definitive. The Crown drew clear lines, set firm boundaries, and ensured precedent would guide the future. For royal observers, this stands as an extraordinary moment in modern monarchy, a permanent public severance of influence executed with discipline and precision.
He has gotten with Meghan, and he now feels he has to protect her and, defend her at all costs, even when there's bad behavior involved.
For Meghan, it represented both liberation and limitation. The narrative was hers to shape, but the platform was gone. For the monarchy, and the path forward was now unmistakably defined. There was no ambiguity, no negotiation. The Crown had spoken, and history would record it. This was not revenge, it was resolution. William chose certainty over hope, protection over sentiment, the institution over illusion. That choice defined everything that followed. The decision marked a turning point, a leader asserting that clarity, decisiveness, and boundaries are non-negotiable, even when personal relationships complicate the moment. Leadership in this case demanded lines that could not be blurred. History will debate the ethics, the timing, the personal fallout, but one fact remains undeniable.
over the fact that Meghan wouldn't stop her father from going on television. And the king kept berating, as Tom Bowers, go to Mexico and figure this out and hash this out with her father, because the longer that this continues, the more talk.
At 7:48 a.m. on a December morning, Prince William closed the longest unresolved chapter in modern royal history. Our monarchy, long overshadowed by speculation and internal tension, finally moved forward without hesitation. From that moment on, the direction was clear. William's reign will be measured by this decision. It became a template for how he leads, signaling to allies, critics, and the public that stability matters more than convenience, principle matters more than sentiment, clarity matters more than comfort. It showed that leadership sometimes requires hard boundaries and public resolution, even when family is involved. From that day forward, the monarchy stopped waiting and started moving. Decisions would be made with intent. Narratives would be controlled. Speculation would no longer dictate. The era of endless ambiguity ended. A new chapter began, one defined by action, discipline, and forward momentum. And in the years ahead, William's legacy will be judged by this moment, by his ability to act decisively when uncertainty threatened everything the crown stood for. If you watch this and have thoughts, drop them in the comments below. If this breakdown made you see things differently, hit subscribe and stay locked in for more deep dives like this. Don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who needs to see it.